Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 5 full cards we need to talk about, with 2 of them being from 2018 and 3 new cards. So let's go ahead and get things moving immediately. Starting things off, we have Juri. SSR5 Juri is a bit of what we've seen in the not-so-distant past, as now we're starting to notice a trend with current Hokago design. Juri's main takeaway is that she hits incredibly hard as a permanent unit. Even if you only ever pull 1 copy of this Juri, she has access to a potential Vocal 8.0, which is not something you can say about most other SSRs, especially for ones that are technically re-rollable. SSR Juri can also finally dance. This is her first SSR that has actual access to dance abilities naturally, so definitely something to consider if you're building Dance Hokago. She continues the trend that Natsuha 5 established with Hokago having access to Interest Ignore, otherwise recognized as a defense pierce against strategies that most Grade Fest teams heavily employ, especially on Tico. So much like Natsuha, Juri plays into an anti-meta role for the time being, and her value as a unit heavily depends on how much Interest Down plays into the overall flow of Grade Fest. I recommend mostly pulling for this card. She is permanent, so you might get spooked by her in the future. Her roles are Nuker as well as Defense Pierce. Juri's initial skill is a Vocal 2.5 appeal that ignores the judge's interest, which follows up with an additional Vocal 0.5 to 2.5 appeal that scales based on how high your attention is. This links into a Vocal 3.0. At max, she unlocks a Dance 3.0 appeal that ignores the judge's interest, follows up with an additional Dance 0.6 to 3.0 scaling on your attention, and links into a Dance 3.0. Juri's 1-star passive is a Vocal Dance 25% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or later. This is a 20% chance to activate twice, and 1-star also unlocks an additional plus 50 Vocal Uncap. At 2-star, she unlocks 2 separate passives. The first is a Vocal Dance 45% up that requires your mental to be 74% or lower. This has a 30% chance to activate twice. And her second passive is a Vocal Dance 10% up that requires your mental to also be below 74%. This has a 50% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a Vocal Dance plus 100, and she has a 4-star uncap of a Dance plus 150. Her memory appeal when maxed out is a 2-turn Dance 100% buff, followed by a Dance 3.0 link. For support recommendations, most of the Hokago supports have reasonable synergy, especially if you've been lucky with the recent limited banners. Combining the Mamimi and Kogane supports for the 100% dance and 100% vocal buffs respectively can help give Juri that extra push in damage as you approach the second half of Alive. For alternatives, make the most of whichever appeal stat you aim for while generating enough SP to stay productive. Natsuha has several options to help with SP generation alongside SR Rinze, while Chiyoko and Kaho can help accumulate stats. As for the team recommendation, this team will look somewhat familiar, as we covered a similar composition with Natsuha 5. Here, we can consider Juri a vocal unit, though you can swap her position with Choco if both cards happen to be maxed out, as Choco can become a vocal card, and Juri becomes a dance card. As an alternative, Juri can champion or assist a dance-themed Hokago if you have Chiyoko 3 on your roster, in which case you would still consider Kaho 4 or Kaho 1 potentially, Rinze 3 maybe as your buffing unit, and you can opt between Natsuha 2 or 5 based on preference. Overall as a center, Juri earns about an A-. The great debate with Juri's memory appeal depends on whether or not you currently run Chiyoko 3 as your center for Dance Hokago. If you don't have Chiyoko, Juri will work fine, as buffing into a memory appeal is a very old and basic, but semi-effective strategy still. It's worth experimenting with to be sure, but she might not hit as hard as you hope. As a unit, she's anywhere from B, so average, to a little above average A+, depending on where you use her. This Juri is kind of tricky to explain. For teams that don't utilize attention, she ends up only being a beat stick that reaches Vocal 3.0 or Dance 3.6 at best, which can be very easily replaced by other units. Most notably, Kogane 4, a card that you can reroll for, can technically have slightly higher damage than this Juri, but Juri has the better potential as Attention Up is a lot more accessible than just simply getting your health incredibly low. A lot riskier for that latter strat. If you can make the most of Attention, she can serve very well at dealing out damage consistently. Her passive might be a bit too slow for faster-paced teams, but the whole package works well for a more particular Hokago setup. Next we have our SR Gacha card, Madoka. Now this is a card we need to talk about, as this is something I've been asking for a long while. Madoka's first SR support has ended up doing something I've personally been waiting on for a while, a downgraded SSR support with more availability. She's a weaker hybrid of Wanderlust Mamimi alongside SSR1 Asahi, which means she can assist in offense and defense equally. Her masteries are incredible to boot, and she's a very high value SR. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has 2 unique support skills, Dance Mastery Dance, which reaches +9 at level 60, and Unit Mastery Dance, which reaches +3 at level 65. Her TFD idea is Dance, and her insight token for Grad is Vocal. Madoka's 1-star passive is a dance 15% up that requires you to be in the dance position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a dance 30% up that requires an active dance buff. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to dance, and her 4-star appeal is a dance 2.5 that lowers a single judge's interest by 30% for 1 turn. And her event passive is a dance 5% up that just requires Madoka on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Madoka earns anywhere from an A to A+, because she fits perfectly into the current meta for Shiny. If you've been struggling with Grade Fest and find judges are falling too fast, and have been failing to find extra copies of the SSR Wanderlust Mamimi, Madoka will absolutely assist you in keeping those judges around to your benefit. You'll find it much easier to max out this Madoka compared to Mamimi, so she can bring immediate benefit to any aspiring producer. As you know, interest down increases the judge's defense, so reducing incoming damage by 30% for the turn can absolutely prevent a judge from being destroyed by a big memory appeal or a particular single target attack. Stacking these up from multiple opponents also helps out in keeping that judge alive, which is something that many teams in Grade Fest currently employ. So having access to this through an SR is absolutely lovely. I recommend that you pull for this card, and honestly, I'd even highly recommend that you pull for this Madoka. Next we have our event SR, Kogane. Kogane is our latest event PSR, and she offers a toolkit we've seen plenty of times before. She has embodied the revenge strategy of many Antika cards that come before her, this time opting for Visual and Dance as her 2 attributes of choice. They hit decently hard, and are honestly comparable to even some of the initial SSRs in terms of damage, and both come with a substantial 4-turn 150% buff for their appropriate stat. The only real problem you run into with this Kogane is that you clash directly with Bebop Kogane, who can assist Visual and Dance with her pure buffing ability. It's ultimately up to you if you favor raw damage versus a buffing setup. So until we get another major buffer for Antika, it might be best to continue using Bebop Kogane and to save this Kogane as a backup strategy later. The card art is real cute to compensate. I recommend actually farming for this card. It's one of the few event cards I would absolutely say you probably want, as I think she is pretty usable for the most part regardless of Fest or for production. She's just pretty good overall. Her roles are Revenge, Attacker, as well as Buffer, to an extent. Kogane's initial skill is a visual 0.7 to 3.5 that scales up based on how low your mental is. This links into a visual 150% buff for 4 turns. At max, she unlocks a dance 1.0 to 5.0 appeal that scales based on how low your mental is, and links into a dance 150% buff for 4 turns. Her 1-star passive is a visual 12% buff that requires your mental to be 74% or higher. This has a 40% chance to activate once. And her 2-star passive is a dance 24% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or later. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to dance, and her memory appeal when maxed out is a dance 2.0 that scales based on how low your mental is, and links into a dance 3.0. For support recommendations, if this feels weirdly familiar, you'd be correct. Many of the same aspects of these cards will work well for Kogane as they would for Mamimi, who we talked about not too long ago. Just make sure to load up on that attribute that works best for you. The alternatives continue the same trend of considering SP masteries to help keep things moving forward during your production, and any other real bonuses that can help push the team forward a bit. Keep in mind that if you're building for Grad, you do want to include members of Antika for Kogane to receive that sweet 5% buff if you are able to pick up the skill per Antika member. For team recommendations, much like Mamimi 5's review, the team here will look mostly similar. A big switch up though. Kiriko 3 becomes more or less essential, as you lose much of your buffing potential without Bebop Kogane, so you end up having to depend on her Link appeal instead, which may or may not slow down the team depending. As for the alternative, Regardless if you opt for visual above or dance here, you'll need to work out a strategy that guarantees the live lasts long enough to set up multiple link appeals, especially with Kogane. Stalling and defending through Kiriko or Mamimi, or even now the new support Madoka, are absolutely necessary for this style of strategy. Overall, Kogane receives a C+ to B- as a center. The main issue with Kogane's memory appeal is that Antika already have more than enough dance options that ultimately serve the team better than this one. This memory appeal can be useful in a pinch if you're truly strapped for units, but many other cards will serve you much better overall. As a unit, she earns about a B-. It's sort of tough to recommend this Kogane for your main teams when Bebop Kogane exists and does everything you'd need her to do for teams that she works best on. Pure revenge style units are already sort of hard to splash onto teams unless they have something else going for them, which Kogane doesn't really. If you really feel that you're missing some extra damage and want a little more risk for potentially better reward, you can give it a shot. If you're able to utilize her effectively, that's where the B- comes in. Otherwise, I would probably also grade her around the C range, just a little below average, but otherwise not terrible. Next, we have our rerun cards. We're going back in time. Dating back to 2018, Halloween Meguru has aged in a particular way. She's generally bad for most Fest builds, but she shines most in Collabofest, where her 4-star appeal can make or break dance-focused teams looking to assist in making the harder stages much more feasible. She's incredibly lackluster outside of Collabofest, and we have much more consistent dance Meguru supports, so keep her in mind for the right event. She does have a scaling support appeal starting at a dance 2.5, working its way all the way up to a dance 3.0 if you level her to 80. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina Support, and her unique support skill is Tension Mastery Dance, reaching +4 at level 80. Her TFD idea is Mental, and her insight token for Grad is Dance. Meguru's 1-star passive is a dance 18% up that requires you to be in the dance position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a dance 20% up and vocal 15% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This is a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to dance, and her 4-star appeal is a slow dance 2.0 that increases the judge's interest by 50% for 2 turns. Her event passive is a dance 6% up that requires Meguru on your team, and it has a 40% chance to activate twice. Meguru earns a C+. As I mentioned before, Meguru offers not a whole lot for aspiring players nowadays, as many of her passives are either too weak or not useful enough to make a huge impact. Her Tension Mastery might as well not exist, and Rest Boost doesn't quite serve the purpose that most players truly need anymore. She's real good for Collabofest, especially since slow doesn't matter in Collabofest, and that's what saves her from getting honestly a D. You might as well farm for this Meguru, especially if you are interested in Collabofest in the future. Lastly, we have Sakuya. Also from 2018, Wolf Sakuya, despite her fun art, is not a particularly fun unit to use. Her Tension Mastery somehow manages to be slightly better than Meguru's, despite being the SR compared to Meguru's SSR. The rest of this card is fairly lackluster, and you'll almost never find a use for her 4-star appeal. While reducing the judge's attack power by 10% is neat, you'd need multiple of these for it to truly be useful, and to that I say, good luck. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Trouble Guard, and her unique support skill is Tension Mastery Dance, reaching +4 at level 65. Her TFD idea is Appeal, and her insight token for Grad is Visual. Sakuya's 1-star passive is a dance 12% up that requires you to be in the dance position, and this has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a dance 40% up that requires your mental to be 49% or lower. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to dance, and her 4-star appeal is a dance 2.0 that reduces the judge's influence, aka their attack, by 10% for 3 turns. Her event passive is a dance 4% up that requires Sakuya on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Sakuya earns a C-. The only real saving grace of this Sakuya is her reasonably okay 40% gold passive, as it can work as a budget option for revenge teams that need an extra kick and dance, and is really the only thing, much like Meguru, that spares her from a D rank. Outside of that, Wolf Sakuya doesn't do anything particularly special, and serves to fill out your Sakuya checklist more than anything else. You might as well farm for the card while you have the time. And that's going to do it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. I wanted to get this video out earlier, but there were some happenings that prevented me from recording earlier. So next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next. There's big rumors that it might be another Nocchill, or maybe even a Stray Light card. So let's look forward to it together. I've been Cho, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.